Good morning. What a blessing it's been to come together as our nationwide church this weekend, to celebrate, to worship, and to discern on matters important to their church. My name is Calvin Kwan, and I am the moderator for Mennonite Church Canada. Welcome back to the second part of our annual Delegate Business Sessions for this weekend. Before we move back into our agenda, I want to take a moment to clarify the number participating our hybrid event at Gathering this year. So we have 215 people registered in person and 100 additional registered online. We have 50 volunteers, all the people that we've seen in the green vests, as well as the people who have not been seen driving cars back and forth between here and the airport. So we have a total of 365 total participants engaged this year. What a blessing that's been. My apologies for confusing some of these numbers on Saturday. Before making numbers public the next time, I'll be sure to check in with my finance minister. At our Saturday afternoon delegate business session, you will recall our program update presentations from Allegra Friesen-Epp and Doug Clausen for Indigenous Settler Relations. Jeanette Hansen also presented an update on behalf of International Witness. And then we had Arlen Friesen-Epp present an update on behalf of Common Word and our Resource Center. We ended on Saturday without having enough time to adequately process our second table discussion to respond to our program updates. We would like to spend time now to continue these conversations. On page 19 of the program book, section 10, on page 19, you will find the questions for where we left off our tables discussion. So now we turn our conversation back over to our delegates. If you don't have your program books handy, we do have the discussion questions presented here on screen. So once again, at your tables, all your tables, whether you're a delegate or not, we ask that you identify a note taker for your table to record comments on the notepads that you should have at your tables, and our listening committee will assist us in collecting the comments and compiling them for the Joint Council to review. All right, so we have 15 minutes. We'll turn it over to your tables now for discussion. All right, so we'll have maybe one more minute. If I could ask you to wrap up your conversation, get your tables, we'll reconvene here in a minute.
I'm not good at taking notes. Convocation. I might not be as clear as I was here.
All right, let's reconvene here. Your discussion feedback is important to us, so we ask that you clearly write your table number at the top of your written notes so that our listening committee can collate and compile your feedback. Before the end of our time here this morning, I'd ask that each of the note takers, if you could please leave the notes from your table groups just up front here, just right next to where Susan is seated. That way we can make sure that the notes get to the listening committee as well as eventually to the Joint Council for processing. All right, for delegates who wish to bring a question or a comment, please come to one of the two microphones that we have set up. I can't see the microphones. Okay, I see the microphones set up just right there. That's great. So why don't we start with table number 9. Let's start with table number 9.
Hello, everyone. I'm Emily Simic. I am from MC Saskatchewan. I'm the pastor at Langham Mennonite Fellowship. So some highlights from our discussion group and what we touched on was that our questions in regards to the program areas where we felt like there wasn't a lot of touching on where the biggest needs are within those programs and maybe how we can grow that or what you need from the regional churches to help support those ministries. We also felt like each group didn't get a lot of time to present, but I recognize there's so much information to get through and we realize the challenges in that. There were some questions about the cut to the ISR program, like who decides that, who makes that decision, what was the consultation around that. In regards to question B, the communication channels, we empathize very strongly with the difficulty of this as we experience it in our own congregations, and that information is sent, but then there are people who are filtering the information, right? So a question of like, how do we encourage our congregations and our bodies to recognize the importance of what is happening at the national church level and what that does for our regions. So some discussion around that, as well as, how do we get information, the delegate reports out to the broader congregations. For example, in MCEC, hundreds of, over 100 congregations, but 28 delegates. So just some of those questions were what came for us.
Thank you, Table Number 9.
Thank you for that, Emily, Table 9. I would, this is an oversimplification, but I would largely say around the questions that you asked, the largest challenge that we face is access to congregations. And the regions would say that too. That's the largest thing. If we say with Common Word, for example, what's the greatest challenge for Common Word? To get resources to the people who are leading adult Sunday school classes, or to get access there. For International Witness, I would say it would be to find people from our congregations, to be on the witness support networks, and to engage congregations, and then to engage congregations, particularly the ones budget time. Those are very important. And the third thing around the Indigenous settler relations, again, the communication and the locating this in the regions, which is the new Mennonite Church Canada model. It's the regional groups that are fueling this with nationwide coordination. So the heartbeat of it comes to communication, which I know all of you who are regional folks face the same challenge, and with COVID, bulletins have become truncated in many congregations, and it's just really, really difficult to make that work, but we're trying to find ways. Thank you.
With regards to budget processing, the priorities, the regional churches feed in what are their priorities to the nationwide level. The staff comes up with a budget. That budget is then first reviewed by the Financial Policy and Audit Committee to make sure that it's reasonable, not to look at priorities. We're assuming that Joint Council will look at that and decide it, but FPAC looks at it and tries to figure out whether the deficit is reasonable and can be handled, and that the budget is actually realistic. And then after FPAC looks at the budget, it goes to Joint Council for final recommendation to the Delegate Assembly. And that's where we look at, does the budget reflect the priorities that the regions have asked of the nationwide level? So that's how the processing happens. It's unfortunate when you're talking about things that involve staff change, it's not really fair in some senses. I don't know how you debate that when the person is in the room is really, really very tricky, and it's something that we wrestle with, because we just had to assume that the regional church representatives and moderators that came to Joint Council understood the priorities in their area.
Okay, other questions, comments? Why don't we move to table number 12?
Rodney Hennessy from MC Sask and pastoring at Grace Mennonite Church. I'm just reading through our notes here for the first time. We talked a lot about when we're trying to send out information, when we're trying to get people to connect with information, the importance of having stories without that information. You know, people don't always remember just a big list of what's available. They remember how lives were changed with those things that are available. And that was one of our main things that we talked about.
Thank you. All right, why don't we hear from a table closer up front here? How about table number 3?
Tim Ringer, Mennonite Manitoba from Bethel Mennonite. Table 3, we talked about there's lots of communication coming into churches. One church has a 5-page bulletin currently. And like, even in other churches, like the admin assistant has to decide like which announcements come into it, and then like content gets lost, but also there's too much content, then so it's a balancing act, and it's hard to find where. One thing we did talk about was generational differences in how we process communications. So some would prefer we found like a couple of different generations reviewing a table, which found some would prefer like hard copies and in-person communications. Others would prefer just a post on social media that they can like. And we were like hypotheticalizing about like what's coming next. Do we have to have TikTok for all of our congregations? And maybe we need to, but finding different ways to communicate to the people in the ways that they best process those pieces of information. The personal was also really important, and the contextualization of information. So like when we finally got this information about why you made those decisions, why MC Canada made decisions around Steve, that helped us. Oh, that makes sense. If you just hear, oh, we lost Steve, that was hard to hear. And then so getting this context and the behind the scenes communication is really helpful. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I'm hearing some common themes from the table before, telling us the stories, giving us context, and from this table here, improving our communications, which is tied to even what Doug was saying before. How do we get the message out from MC Canada to the rest of the regions? All right, thank you. All right, why don't we hear from table number 5?
So as the humble note taker, I guess that makes me the reporter. One of the things we talked a lot about is just how to make the very large flow of information, how to break that down into things that are easily shareable. And we also talked about, in some congregations, things like a Viber message group or a WhatsApp message group are the main way that some stay connected, as well as the importance of personal communication that's not just written. So things like having short, shareable video clips that can be shared through a variety of channels can sometimes be a more effective way of communicating than written kinds of materials. And so it's a challenge that congregations are trying to figure out, and regional churches and the nationwide church. And probably that means thinking about some of the hard work of communications, of making things easily shareable in different mediums, and finding some way to help prioritize information coming through, because it's easy for it to get just lost in the volume of it. So how to make it more personal and easily shareable.
Thank you. All right. How about we hear from table number 10?
from Mennonite Church, Manitoba. My home church is Elam. We did think we'd get under the radar, but then we started chatting amongst ourselves, saying maybe in light of the video idea, maybe MC Canada should get a TikTok channel. So yeah, we agreed that having some, we wrote live person highlighting news or specific programs, but videos would be great. And congregations, I know ours is extremely excited when we get guests from, let's say, MCM, or we've had Steve Hendricks also in our worship. We noted that a lot of our churches have bulletins, and they get the bulletin typist, we call it, has a person who gets the newsletter from the regional church, and the regional church, in our case, includes a lot of MC Canada stuff, so they sort through it. I should tell Cheryl that we highlight a lot of CMU announcements in there. So when we were also joyful for the positions that you are creating, and also to have a climate change position. And we also lamented the Steve situation, but understand the dynamics around that. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, I think maybe we'll take one more table. How about we hear from table number 7? Have we heard from table 7? Not yet.
All right, so we talked about a lot of things. There's a suggestion for congregations to maybe appoint a point person in the church who can maintain consistent contact with the regional and national conferences. Probably not the person just typing up the bulletin, but somebody who can, who might be the person who's being a delegate or otherwise bringing information both to and from the national body. What else? The youth, yeah, so we talked a bit about concern that a decrease in youth planning and programming over the long term has led to our current lack of pastoral candidates nationally. There's a lot of encouragement to invest in youth programming, and in youth engagement.
All right, thank you. We're running a little bit out of time here, but have there been any other things that have yet to be said that we wish to hear? Okay, there's a person standing at the mic over here, and then we'll wrap up with this mic over here, so go ahead.
Lots of people have been sharing about the second question. We have some pretty big questions and some frustrations at our table about the first. One is, we've been talking about what's been happening at the national level, what's at the regional level. Oh, sorry, Julia Thiessen, Charlton Mennonite Church, MCM. Very little has been said about this new 0.5 position in nationwide leadership and formation. And while we understand, our table understood that there was maybe need for this, there's some big questions about why that isn't a regional thing, and ISR is being pushed down to the regions. So that was one of the big questions we had. What falls under that role? Is this really about misconduct cases? And there's a lot of mourning that if it's misconduct that's putting too much on our leadership on executive plates, then that's a reason to cut ISR. That was really hard for us. We would like a lot more clarity on what that is entailing. And already we are noticing some big holes at the regional level on ISR as committees meet, and they don't have the resources they had in the last few months. They don't have anybody guiding them. And we also wondered then what's been happening between regions. So some groups, we mentioned very bluntly, like MCEC might have the resources to help other regions deal with misconduct cases, and maybe MCM and MC Sask might have more to deal with to do ISR. And how is that actually being collaborated? How is that being pulled together across regions? We would like to hear more about that. And then finally, we had some really, it felt like we were really of one mind here when we felt a deep loss with Steve, and we want to know really if there's a bigger question about what ISR, what climate action means for our churches, if this is a debate about how much advocacy we should be doing, we need to name that, because there's a deep desire and need for advocacy, and we want our church people to do that. I felt, anyway, maybe hopefully speaking for a table, we know that there's not everybody wants that, but we feel this deep yearning for that, and if that is one of the reasons these roles changed, because we have different ideas of where advocacy fits in the church, then we need to name that and talk about it.
Thank you. I think we have some responses on that, but go ahead.
I'm Gordon Peters, Newtown Park from MC Sask. The only comment that our group had was concerning the first point, and we want to have a big shout out to Arlen Friesen and A Common Word for all the support and resources they do provide to all of our churches.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'll make a general comment here, and Julia, maybe we should talk afterwards. There's the whole table. I'd be happy to sit with your table at some point and others. But when we designed this whole assembly, when the restructuring happened, the thoughts behind it are that a large part of the nationwide work happens now in the regions, and the regions come together to do the overarching work together. Therefore, when we plan our assembly sessions together, our gatherings, we actually changed it from assembly to gathering, and that name was done very specifically for specific reasons. When we come together, we're primarily about worship and celebration, and much less time is devoted to delegate work. And I would even say it's just doing the basic delegate work. It's passing the financial statements, it's doing other things. I think it's on page 90-something in your delegate books. Just that outlines it. So we budgeted time that way. We clearly are sensing that there's a lot more desire for more open mic and more delegate work at this level. If there's a show of hands to indicate that people want to do more, that we can take this afternoon, we're back in joint council meeting and we're back to do a review of this. And I'm sensing, and we're sensing, and Calvin and I have been receiving comments over the past few days that the delegates want to be more active here. So maybe that means going back to our format previously, where we were actually another day for more delegate work. And so I think a lot of the questions that are being asked are best answered in the regions, because it's the regions, as Alan said, through the budget process that bring the priorities to us, and when we shape them. So we are going to run out of time with if we don't get to elections and actually passing this budget at this point. So I'm wondering if we have to move to there.
Okay, thank you everyone once again for your feedback. Your feedback is important. It does shape our nationwide agenda. So yeah, please do get your notes. If you can, please bring them to the front. The Joint Council will be considering the topics of conversation that have come up in our tables today. All right, on Saturday's delegate business session, Marguerite Jack, the chair of our nomination committee, presented the slate for our elections. And we'll have that queued up on our slide. So the officers for MC Canada for 2022 to 2024, we have our moderator, Geraldine Balzer from MC Saskatchewan, our assistant moderator, Bruce Berrigan from MC Alberta, and for Secretary-Treasurer, we have Paul Gilbert from MCEC. The members of our nominating committee for 2022 to 2024, we have Gladys Bender from MCEC, Randy Hildebrand from MC Manitoba, Alan Harder from MCBC, Joni Neufeld from MC Alberta, and finally for our Financial Policy and Audit Committee, we have Tony Schellenberg from MC Manitoba, who is serving from 2022 to 2025. The next motion moved and seconded by Joint Council is that we accept the slate as presented. So at this point, delegates, we ask that those who affirm the slate, if you could please raise your hands. Thank you. The motion is carried. On Saturday, Alan Hebert, our Secretary-Treasurer, presented the budget at Saturday's Delegate Business Session. The next motion that's moved and seconded by Joint Council is that we accept the operating fund budget, the capital reserve fund budget, and the formation bequest fund budget for the fiscal year 2022 and 2023 as presented. Is there any discussion, any questions on the budget? All right, if there are no comments or questions on the budget at this point, we'll call the question, and delegates, those in favor, if you could please raise your hands. Those opposed, if you can please raise your hands. Thank you. The motion is carried. I'd like to invite Doug now to join me on stage to give us a preview of what we can expect in the months ahead as he works with our regions and Joint Council to develop a strategic plan. Just looking at the clock here, and we've run out of time to actually have delegates engage in table conversations on strategic planning this weekend, but we look forward to keeping you and the regions engaged on our progress. So Doug, did you want to come up and offer some insights as to what we can expect?
As I mentioned in the report that I gave on Saturday, we have had the benefit now of having several of our regions, not every one of them, but most of them, engage in a visioning process over the last few years, which has been great, because when I first began my role in June of 2019, we came into October of 2019 and we said, hey, let's get started at strategic planning together. And the comments around the Joint Council table were, well, hang on a second, we're needing to start ours, or we're needing to redo ours, or we're in the middle of ours, and so we really need to know where we are as regions before we can do this as a nationwide church. So what we did then is we postponed the strategic planning until almost now, until most regions have finished what they are planning on preparing and posting, and you'll find those right near the end of your report book. As Calvin said, there's just not enough time, and again, my apologies for us, and we will adjust in coming meetings. There's not enough time to get into it, but I've been talking with Geraldine. I anticipated her being elected, and so I've been talking with her and Bruce about the possibility of perhaps gathering informally. The delegate session will close here very soon, but informally gathering those of you who are interested and doing an evening online where we could examine the regional priorities and look through them and then examine the Mennonite Church Canada priorities that are there and saying, so what do you think? And then we could use that as the groundwork. So I don't know how you feel about that. I hope we don't expect everybody to be engaged, but it would sure be great if some of you could. And then we could use that along with then going into the regions, and then doing as the model does, we build the strategic plan in and through the regions using the guiding understandings that we have. So we'll forego it today. I anticipated we might run out of time on Saturday, and we did today, but we'll forego it today, and we'll hopefully pick up maybe on an evening time or something.
All right, this then concludes the annual delegate business session for our 2022 gathering. We'll reconvene for today's closing worship and plenary session at 10:30. But first, I just want to invite Doug forward.
We've been served over the past 6 years so well by Calvin and Alan. I was the one that put Alan's name forward for when Mennonite Church Canada was going through the massive restructuring adjustments. Marguerite Jack phoned me and said, we're looking for somebody to take over the secretary-treasurer role, anticipating moving into this new structure. And I said, oh, Alan Hebert just retired. And he just retired. He's a finance guy. He's got a PhD in engineering. He's got an MBA, and he's a policy writer. And so Marguerite phoned him up, and in a weak moment caught him. And he said yes. And at times, when Alan came into the role, there had been a transition in the MC Canada at that point had a part-time contract accountant. And it was too little time. Alan was working sometimes almost a week a month in Winnipeg, living in Winnipeg, and getting things on track again to suit our new structure. And so I don't know, we can't even keep track of the hours you put in, Alan, for this, but it was immense. I knew, at least from Foothill's perspective, one Sunday a month you were not there because you were still in Winnipeg working that whole week. And Calvin, I remember when you first came onto the platform in 2016, right after our Being a Faithful Church vote had happened, and you came on just at the front end of moving into the big changes that came with the special delegate session in 2017, and we talk about Calvin's engineering-based organization, which is impeccable. It's to see the agendas for the Joint Council are remarkable, and they're often planned weeks ahead of time. Calvin devoted so much time to this with having a young family, so we would often have Zoom calls starting at 8 p.m. Eastern where we would talk for quite a while, and then occasionally on weekends when you weren't helping to manage the older generation in your family. And we are just so sincerely thankful for the time that both of you have given to this role. Hours and hours and hours. And before we applaud, we made up a little song that we'd like to invite Joint Council to come forward. We took, Rose and I, when we were driving between North Battleford and Lloydminster, we just got the computer out and made up a little song to the tune of Red River Valley that the Joint Council and the EMG are going to come forward and sing for you. So maybe you have to have both of you, maybe Calvin, just stand down here below and Alan up front, and we'll sing this little song for you. If we could have some of these mics on and we could just step a little closer. Yeah. So this is our tribute song to Calvin and Alan.
Well, I think Doug overstated a little bit how much time I spent in Winnipeg, although I do like visiting the city and walking in the woods next to the CMU campus. But anyway, I really enjoyed the challenges and the intellectual stimulation that this role has given me, and it's been a pleasure to serve the church.
This is one of those moments where spreadsheets just fail to have the words to express my feelings. I'm so deeply grateful for this opportunity, very humbled to be able to serve the Nationwide Church in this way. I'm very thankful for the wisdom over the years as well as the encouragement in my role. So thank you. So we'll just have a coffee break right now, and we'll reconvene at 10:30 for worship. Thank you.